Hello, everybody. Welcome to this current episode of Music Meltdown. Today, we are going to be getting to a band that I actually kind of care about, which it's been a while since we've been doing this. I think it's been since Fiona Apple, in which I've gotten to an artist in which I really love. Despite that, however, I'm really excited to get into things because we are doing the artist Cab For Cutie, a classic indie rock band of the late 90s going into the 2000s. They made some albums after the 2000s. Most people don't talk about them, but past that, we're all good. As you may notice, we don't have Steph here. I'm sorry. And yeah, Aiden, do you want to give us your familiarity with Cab For Cutie?
I think I had heard like one of these songs. Someone sent it to me, like I think it might have been you,
It was.
like trying to get me into one of their albums. It didn't really work, but I had
Makes
heard
sense.
that. And then I listened to all these albums, and then I re-listened to most of them just to kind of get more of like a take. I think I got through like 5 of them a second time.
That's more than I expected.
Yeah.
And Tom? Oh yeah, we have a guest, Tom Williams. He has a YouTube channel as well. I couldn't get Sam from his channel, so I got the next best thing.
Yeah, no, I'm the second best person on my channel for sure.
You insist.
No, it's cool to be here, and Death Cab for me, one of my favorite bands of all time. Especially, well, I won't say especially because that'll ruin my list, but it's especially a certain period of the band. I sort of became familiar with them through a podcast I listened to, and they sort of were like talking about them a lot, and then yeah, Ben Gibbard's one of my favorite songwriters, and I am both excited and extremely nervous to get into this. So.
I agree about the latter there. So this goes well. I think we'll have Aiden go first. You can go second, and I'll do last. Alrighty, okay. Aiden, kick us off with a 2-star review.
2, that's generous. Okay, these like okay, so first I just want to say I'm really sorry to both of you. But like all of these kind of blended together in my brain to a large extent. And then also I didn't really like the blend because it's basically, number one, the lyrics are pretty good, I would say, just reading them on their own. But then the way they're delivered, the guy's voice is so annoying and so emo. I can't stand it. I feel like the sound is so like clean and thin that it doesn't gel with me really well. And I like the drums. I kind of, as a drummer, that's one thing I picked up on. It has, the drummer is very good. He has a lot of kind of grooves in his arsenal. He has a very good sense of rhythm and that kind of thing. So I like that. I like the lyrics, but in terms of the other elements, it was not that good. But the worst one for me was the worst one was Narrow Stairs, I think it's called. And this one is here because I remember reading about it. It just had kind of a classic sound, but I didn't even like. There was nothing I really remembered. All of the songs, if you like, even have like very similar melodies they always go back to, and just like the delivery, he's very, I don't know, I don't really get. But this one, like, I don't even have much to say. It kind of just like it wasn't like aggressively bad. I just don't care about it. So that's my bottom one.
Yeah, I figured it was going to be between that one or another record. This is starting off great.
Yeah, that's fine. I won't be talking about that album yet, yeah. My bottom, I think, I've talked about how much I love this band, but I'd never explored the 2010s material. And I feel like there was probably a good reason for that. My bottom is the latest album, Thank You For Today, which I'm going to give 2 stars. I think this album's bad. I think it's like really just stiff, sterile, bad. Like, I'm a fan of Ben's voice. He sounds bored on this album. He sounds like he doesn't want to be there. I really don't have that many notes. It's just one of the most vapid things I've ever listened to. And that's coming to someone who's a big fan of the band. So 2 stars, Thank You For Today is my bottom.
Yeah, I did not thank Mr. Gibbard for giving us this record. That's also my bottom. I'm not as low as you. I give it 2.5 stars. I think it's fine. But man, this is the epitome of the most fine record I've ever heard. This is the most sanitized and like Purell hand sanitizer version of the band. Nothing is really all that captivating or interesting. Per the usual, Gibbard has good lyrics, but these are the most standardized and sort of the most bland that he ever gets. And there isn't even much of a standout track, which I can say on their other weaker records. It's basically 40 minutes of stock indie rock with some electronics thrown in. I don't dislike it, but there's little to no reason to ever go back to it, and there isn't even a real notable track. It's a low 2.5 stars. Would not give that one a thank you.
Yeah, I think we're all about to be talking about that because that's my second lowest. I agree that even though like it feels like as they go along, like there's exceptions and kind of times in their career where it seems like they try to mix up the style. It seems like as just like a trend, a lot of it just seems to be like they kind of rehash a lot of the old stuff, especially on this album. And in terms of the voice thing that Tom was talking about, I get what you mean. It seems like even though I didn't really like his voice originally, it seems like by this point he's almost doing like an imitation of his old self, and I just don't like it. But it felt like I remembered a bit more about it just because of that element. So it because of that, I'm going to give it 1.5. It was something more happened. It wasn't as little. Like it had the element of like at least it was bad in a way that I'll remember tomorrow. So yeah.
That is one of the best reviews I've ever heard for any album. That was amazing. So my number 8 is going to be definitely a big step up from my bottom, but it's still not great. It's going to be their 2011 album, Codes and Keys. A lot better than their latest album. There's some songs in here I actually like. The title track is something a bit different for them, sort of piano-led number, which I quite like. But there is the production of these 2010s albums is really frustrating to me. It's like if you produced it in a slightly less sort of polished, sterile way, then like these songs aren't bad. Like there are a couple sort of meh ones, but it's the way they've been mixed and the way they sound is just, it doesn't really do it for me. So yeah, You Are a Tourist is a good song as well. But there's nothing on here that's like top tier Death Cab stuff that I would, chuck on a playlist or anything. There's some good songs, but yeah, it's a lot better than Thank You for Today, and I would give it 3 stars. It's fine. It's okay. It's half decent, but it's not getting anywhere near their top stuff. So
yeah, I'm going to have to concur with you as well. My number 8 is also Codes and Keys. Wasn't very impressed with this record, and if I had to describe it very plainly, I think it's very derivative of Plans and Narrow Stairs. The main difference here being that they turn up the electronics, and I don't really like whenever they go super heavy to the electronic sound. I think it gets a little bit boring and takes away a lot of the more interesting elements that they have going on. Despite that, though, I think a lot of Gibbard's lyrics and performances are not as bad as they are on Thank You for Today, but they still kind of feel a little bit stock in comparison to the records that came before it. Regardless, it's a Death Cab record for me, so past Thank You for Today, all of them are going to have some songs that I really enjoy. Some Boys I thought was really good, Monday Morning as well, and I really liked St. Peter's Cathedral, and lastly, Stay Young, Go Dancing. But this was signaling a pretty hefty decline for the group for me, and I'm going to go 3 stars as well. I think it's fairly decent, and there are some really good songs, but as a whole, it's a pretty subpar record for the band.
Yeah, I won't be talking about that one soon, so I kind of will tell you something. But my next one is going to be We Have the Facts, and we're voting yes for number 7. This was like you took the first album and it just sounded the same. Like it was like they just duplicated it. Like it had the exact same sound. Like, and the first time, at least they have the novelty on their side, and that the style is not good, but at least it's the first album that's doing it. This time, like just like title track and 405 and this kind of stuff, like it just sounds like the last one, but it's not good. The last one wasn't good, but at least it was new. This is just old and bad. So I'm giving this a 1.5 out of 5.
Tom, I'm going to cut you off here real quick because I know that you're going to have some choice words for that. Aiden, by chance, are you familiar with Built to Spill at all? Because I think on the first couple of records, they do have a lot of influence from Built to Spill, especially Doug Marsh's writing and sort of guitar tones.
I don't know anything about Built to Spill now.
Okay, because if you knew those records, I think that you would think even less of the first two. So that's good to know.
Oh, shit. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I've not walked out yet, so that probably means that I'm here to stay because it can't get worse than that. That's all I'll say. My number 7, kind of topical. This is probably my most controversial placement. The debut, Something by Airplanes, is my number 7. I kind of think the absolute opposite of what Aiden just said, because the debut to me is like they're sort of starting off and they're trying to figure out what they want to do. And then we have the facts from voting. Yes, they would do everything that they do on the debut 10 times better in terms of writing, guitar work, vocals, all these things. I'm right, so you can shake your head all you want. It's fine. But Something About Airplanes, I mean, it's still good. I mean, Benta Squares is a really good way to open the discography. It's a great track. I also really like Champagne from a Paper Cup. But I just think the songwriting is so much weaker than the albums to come. It's not very memorable, but there's still some cool guitar work. I really didn't like the closing track with the female backing vocals. Didn't work for me at all. It felt like they were trying to be something that they're not. But yeah, again, I heard We Have the Facts first, so that might have colored my perspective of it. But it's still a good. It's probably a 3.5 stars for me. I think it's a good record. As much as I'm sort of slamming it, it's kind of in response to Aiden's comments. So that's my number 7.
Yeah, we have one hot minute before I'm going to be talking about that record. My number 7, the regular and logical number 7, is going to be Narrow Stairs. And I wanted to like this record more than I do. Why are you surprised? We were talking about this like it wasn't even in existence in DMs. I don't know. But let's be honest, this is just a massive step down after Plans. There's some great things about the record. The guitar work is, per the usual, very good. And I think it sounds a lot punchier and a lot more full than on Plans. And I think Gibbard is writing the same quality of songs that were on Plans, and it shows in the highlights, like Boxy Canyon Bridge, Cath, Grapevine Fires, and my personal favorite, The Ice is Getting Thinner. But this is the first Death Cab record in which there are a couple of actual duds in the track listing for me. You Can Do Better Than Me and Long Division just don't really do a ton at all for me. And while I do enjoy the cut, I Will Possess Your Heart, it doesn't justify the runtime, and I don't think most of their longer songs ever justify the runtime that well. The perfect length for a Death Cab song for me is like 2.5 minutes to 6 minutes. Whenever they go above that, it seems a little bit like padding a lot at the time. And my other issue is the electronics, which while they started to work into Plans, it felt like a much more full indie rock sound. I think that, like I was saying earlier, they don't feel very, very built into the sound, especially compared to Plans and Photo Record. Despite those issues, I do think that it's a pretty solid record overall, if a bit patchy, and it gets 3.5 stars. Yeah, it's a good record.
Okay. The next one, number 6, we're at, is going to be Kintsugi, which is their like penultimate release, I guess. So it's, you know, it's almost like what I was talking about with the Thank You for Today, where it sounds like not really, it sounds like them putting their style into like overdrive to the point where it gets kind of annoying. But here it's like, I don't know, it's just more of the same. Like it just, I mean, I don't have much to say about these albums because most of them, there are a couple exceptions, but most of them, you could really just shuffle them in any order, and I would probably have pretty similar things to say about all of them. These songs are too long also, I think, like, and that's kind of a problem on all their albums, but it's like, for me, they don't really often justify these runtimes. So, you know, it was 45 minutes, you know, you could have told me it was 70 and I would have believed you. I'm going with 1.5 out of 5.
Well, it just keeps getting better. So my number 6, I will say, we don't agree on rating, but we have the same number 6, Aiden. My number 6 is Kintsugi, the 2015 album. It's my favorite of the 2010s albums. It was actually quite a pleasant surprise on this listen because I was kind of expecting it to be a bit crap, basically, because it was the lowest rated one on Rated Music, and none of the 2010s ones have very high ratings. So I was like, well, these will all be not great. But I actually like it more than the debut, which is probably sacrilegious to a lot of the hardcore fans. But it has some really, honestly, it's one of their most consistent albums songwriting wise. As much as it lacks a big highlight, I think all of these songs are good. I think Black Sun is a really good song. No Room in Frame is really good. You've Haunted Me All My Life is a really nice, slower track. Again, the production I'm not the biggest fan of, but it feels less egregious here because the synth work feels more textured. It feels textural, I should say. It's sort of, rather than taking over the songs, it's sort of used more as like a backing element, like it was on albums like Narrow Stairs and on Plans. But yeah, there's not really much else to say about it. I'll have a lot more to say about my top albums, but once I get into the top 5, that's when we're really getting into the good stuff for me. But I'm still at a 3.5 for Kintsugi. So.
Yeah, shockingly, we have an agreement. My number 6 is also Kintsugi, and this record does not get the love it deserves. I was pretty tempted to put this above my next placement, but I don't know, just couldn't quite justify it. This is clearly a shift from their more electronic leaning Codes and Keys and Narrow Stairs. They go back to more of kind of what they were doing on Plans and Transatlantisism. And I think it's just a more natural sound, especially with the more heightened production that was now going on with it. But it's going for a much somber and atmospheric approach on a lot of these tracks, which I think really helps to orchestrate Gibbard more. It puts his lyrics front and center and really allows him to fill the space with all of the tracks and all of his writing. And there was a lot of really interesting influences on here to me. For example, I heard a little bit of The Cure, specifically Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me era, and Wish. And I love those 2 records. They're some of my favorite Cure records. And it was really cool to see, and I think that went really well into the sound. My favorites here were No Room in Frame, Black Sun, Little Wanderer, Hold No Guns, El Dorado, and especially Binary Sea. I do think whenever they're adding in the electronics, it can hurt tracks a little bit. Something like Good Help is so hard to find is a perfect example of that. But overall, I was very impressed here, and it's going up to 4 stars for me. I think it's very good. And yeah, I think it's pretty far and away their best of the 2010s.
Okay, I'm gonna be getting into, the thing is, I don't really know what is the standard ranking for these, so I'm not sure, as we're getting into top 5, like I'm not sure what I've said thus far is a hot take. My number 5 is going to be Plans. I think they kind of have this tendency they do an album, it's not very good, but then their next album, they do it again. They like do the same style, but it's not as good. It feels like here they're trying to do slightly more like epic, like what was going on in Transatlantisism. But they don't have like, at least that one kind of had a little bit of scope with the lyrics, and I think the lyrics on Transatlantisism are really good actually. But this time I just don't think they back it up. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate, having a bit more scope. Like, it seems like they're going for a bigger sound, just in terms of like I don't know, like, it's almost intangible when I say it, but just feels like they're going for something that's as a whole is greater than the sum of its parts here, which I appreciate, but I mean, it's not going to save it above a 2 out of 5. So
I will happily take that. I figure I'll just note here, I could be wrong, Tom might back me up on this. I think Plans was their first real example of any commercial success with Soul Meets Body, right? So that sort of leads into it having that sort of broader appeal and that sort of heightened atmosphere, I would say.
Yeah, I didn't know much about kind of their commercial history. I kind of would have assumed it would have happened around Atlanticism or Planes, just off the listen. So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell when you listen to them in sequence that when you hit Transatlanticism, there's a definite decision to be a bit more commercial. And then, Plans takes it even further. And I Will Follow You Into the Dark is another really famous one from that album. So my top 5, you will have noticed that it is album 2 through 6. That's what I consider their peak. And I think that's quite clear to me. Like, the gap between 5 and 6 is quite big for me personally anyway. My number 5 is the Photo album from 2001. And again, at this point, it gets quite hard to rank because I do like all these records a lot. This one it's always been one that I've liked but not revisited that much. It has one of their most sort of beloved cult tracks in A Movie Script Ending. That's sort of one of the most well-loved fan favorite tracks. And I agree, I think it's great. I Was a Kaleidoscope is a really fun, catchy piece of power pop goodness, which I love. And what other songs did I have down? Why You Want to Live Here is good as well. Blacking Out the Friction, Styrofoam Plates. I didn't really have any song on here I didn't like, but the thing is with my 5 and 4, I think they have less strong highlights. It's not necessarily that they have bad songs. It's just that for me personally, it's not like the same as my top 3. But yeah, I'm going a strong 4 stars for the Photo album at number 5.
Yeah, I'm going the conventional wisdom, and I have the first 5 as the top 5 because I'm correct. Now, Tom decided to hot take earlier with songs about airplanes, and Aiden decided to hot take earlier with We Have the Facts. I'm going to do it. This is my biggest hot take here, and I don't care. My number 5 is Transatlantisism. This is the record that people love. This is the one that everybody goes crazy about, but this record just feels wimpy after the first 3. It's so much less abrasive, and it has a much cleaner production style. He really turns up the whine and the emo on this record. And none of this is necessarily a bad thing, mind you. I just think that it lends to a less interesting sound for me. It starts out very well, however, with The New Year and Lightness are both very good tracks. I do think Title and Registration is just sort of okay, but the record picks up again with Expo 86, and it shows off how inconsistent I think that this record is overall. The Sound of Settling is okay. Tiny Vessels is a very good song as well. The fact is that it runs about 2 minutes too long, so that's no fun. But there's Passenger Seat and Death of an Interior Decorator, and especially We Look Like Giants. But I think that there's a really lackluster ending with a lack of color, and it's a very good album. And I think that's where Death Cab is going to stay for a good bit. I think it's a good bit weaker than their first 3, but I still have it at 4 stars. It is very good. I own this one on CD as well, actually, but kind of wish it was one of the other records.
Interesting opinions. I like to kind of stall for time before each ranking so I can figure out how I'm going to break the bad news to you guys. this probably isn't that controversial. My number 4 is the Photo album. It feels transitional in the sense that it's kind of going between their early 2, where it was all emo, and moving into later stuff, which is still emo, but has marginally more going on. But I agree about A Movie Script Ending. I thought that was a good song. It has kind of like, it has more, I don't know, I think lyrically it's one of a better group of their songs. I feel like lyrically they're pretty strong across the board, as much as I dislike them. But I think that's a good example. I think Gibbard, the main songwriter, he has a good way of kind of writing and he writes things that could feel pretentious, but he kind of makes them work, which I kind of admire. I think that's a cool trait. But it's not enough to save this from the 2-star zone. So 2 out of 5.
Man, I thought we were just getting into mediocre for you.
I thought we might transition to 2.5 there, but too bad. Interesting. I basically, okay, I'm not going to say anything. I'll say it when I get to the album. But that Transatlantisism review was interesting, to say the least. My number 4, be prepared to scream at me, is Plans. I like Plans a lot. It's really good. It's kind of a divisive one, I think. It's either where a lot of fans completely got sick of them because it's a lot more commercial and clean, or it's, there are a lot of people who only like this record and don't like any of their other stuff, which is kind of interesting to me, because it isn't that different to Transatlantisism or Narrow Stairs. Again, similar problems to the Photo album for me, where it's not that there's no songs on here where I want to skip them, but there aren't that many songs that I revisit individually outside of the context of the album. There are exceptions to that. The 2 big singles, Soul Meets Body and I Will Follow You Into the Dark, both exceptional, brilliant bits of songwriting, especially the latter. It's usually when a band has a big commercial hit that's just guy with an acoustic guitar plays 4 chords, I'm not a big fan of it. But that one, the lyrics are so good, talking about like mortality and stuff like that, and it's just really well, like a really solid as a rock bit of songwriting. Crooked Teeth is really cool as well, and What Sarah Said, those would be my big highlights. But the rest of the album kind of just washes over me. I've heard it like 4 or 5 times, but I still find it quite forgettable in a lot of parts. Even though it sounds great, it's produced really well, I think the songwriting isn't quite as of the standard of their other stuff that I love. So Plans is mine. Again, this ranking could change if you asked me in a month. So, but it's my number 4, and it's this close to 4.5. But I'm going 4. So
I will most certainly be asking, but regardless of that, we have the facts, and we're voting yes. It's going to be my number 4. And this is a really interesting record compared to the debut because it's very similar overall. However, I think that the production is kind of weaker on this record. Something feels a little bit less natural for these songs. And I think Gibbard's vocals are a little bit lower in the mix compared to the debut. Title track is a solid opener, but weaker than some of the material off of the debut record. But then the Employment Pages and For What Reason are both very good songs as well. I think Lowell MA is a really great track. 405 is absolutely fantastic. Little Furry Bugs is very pretty, but I think it's a little bit underwhelming in comparison to those other tracks. The Company Calls Sweet are easily my favorite 2 tracks on here. It's very well put together, and I really like those 2 songs and how they work together. But No Joy in Mudville seems like a very logical and well done closer. And then it's not the closer. But then there's Scientist Studies, which isn't bad. However, it's obviously not the best choice for a closer because of the song that came right before it. It's very enjoyable. I think it's a good bit weaker than the debut, and it's still 4 stars. It's a very good record. And I could see why somebody would like it more than some of their other works. Number 7, though, that's a little goofy.
Who are you talking about? Someone might like it more than that. That's weird. I wonder who you're talking about.
I'm talking about Steph.
Okay, so we're now at the point where I would say we've reached like low mid. Like we were at low before, this is low mid. Top three. This one is something about airplanes. Number three. It's like it's their first one, so it kind of sets the tone for their others, and in that sense it can be praised. I won't, but you could. But it was like, it's, some of the songs are okay. I mean, it kind of, I feel like the guitar, there's a lot of like weird like delay effects on this one, and just very trebly. Like all of their songs have super trebly guitar, which is kind of, I don't know, it's a style, but after a while I don't know if I like it. And even I feel like there's a little more sincerity in the vocals on this one. Like it feels a little more like I like it more, but I'm going 2.5 out of 5. Like, I don't know, it wasn't I'm not listening to it again, I'm telling you that.
Mediocrity has never felt so sweet right now.
Yeah, I mean, as much as Aiden is bashing one of my favorite bands ever, I can't say I'm not entertained, because, like, man, these are some scathing reviews. So my number 3, I guess I thought my number 7 was my big controversial pick, but I guess it's this. It's Narrow Stairs is my number 3. Now, what I find interesting about this album is that it's considered to be the point where they started to be less good. It's sort of better regarded than the 2010s albums, but not as well regarded as the earlier stuff. And I don't think that's fair. I will say Plans is a better produced album. It sounds a lot better, I would say. But Narrow Stairs has some incredible songwriting. It has maybe my favorite 3-track run of their whole discography, with I Will Possess Your Heart, No Sunlight, and Kath. I love all 3 of those songs so much. The opener, Bixby Canyon Bridge, is great as well. The 2 ones that were signaled out as weak songs, You Can Do Better Than Me and Long Division, are also among my favorites on the album. Long Division is like so catchy and infectious. Honestly, I actually really like every song on this album. I just wish it had a better production. And as much as I love the songs on here, they don't quite, they're like this close from my top 2, which is no insult, because those are 2 of my 50 favorite albums of all time. So it's like, I'm not dissing the album there, but I think if I had to pick one song, it would be Kath. That's probably a top 5 Death Cab for Cutie song for me. The riff is incredible. The sentiment of being friends with someone and realizing that they're getting into a relationship they probably shouldn't be getting into. I think that's such a cool idea for a song. And yeah, I think it's really well executed. The guitar playing throughout is great. I do kind of agree on I Will Possess Your Heart that it runs a bit long, but I just love that bass riff. It works so well. And for me personally, if you cut it by like a minute, it'd be better. And also that's a great bit of songwriting too, sort of like Every Breath You Take-esque sort of story of a creepy stalker told in the first person, which makes it even more unsettling, which is nice because what was a facet of Ben's songwriting before then was, yeah, that's the police. The facet of Ben's songwriting before then was how personal it was and how rooted in his own struggles it was. So to have a song where he's sort of playing a character was really interesting to me, because it sort of felt quite strange, because I didn't discover this one until after a lot of the earlier stuff. So yeah, pleasant surprise, 4.5 stars for me. I think it's fantastic and very underrated, especially by you 2. So.
Well, I don't think it's fantastic, and I think you're slightly absurd for that. But regardless, my number 3 is going to be the Photo album. This is really their first step into what Death Cab would become in the later 2000s. It's a much cleaner and more produced album, and by proxy, it allows Gibbard's vocals to take more of a center stage, which makes me kind of surprised that Aiden likes it so much, because he seems to hate him in the same level that I hate Tom Verlaine. So hey, at least we both agree there. I feel like this is probably their best lyrical album up to this point. Just incredibly well put together songwriting, and of course you can disagree. But anyways, yeah, it's just shown through all the fantastic songs here. Songs like A Movie Script Ending, We Laugh Indoors, Locking Up Friction, and Styrofoam Plates, just to name a few of them. And I love the sound of this album. I think it really lends into these songs. It really makes them feel bigger than what they are. It's just something that is missing on the first two records, but the first two records make up for with just the amazing guitar work and the rhythm section as well as just Gibbard naturally being as great as he is. I pretty much loved all of the songs except for I Was a Kaleidoscope, which I think falls a little bit flat, personally speaking. Despite that, every other song here is very good to great, and I'm gonna give it a like 4.5 stars. It's a great record. We skyrocket after this though.
I just want to clear something up. I did not say I liked this album. I said I gave it 2 out of 5. It got number 4 for default reasons. Okay, like I just want to clear that up. But we're now at the top 2. If you've been following along, you know what 2 are left. And for this number 2, it's going to be spicy because I'm going to put Transatlantisism in second, because it was a case of the album I have above this. It's not great, but at least it wasn't the same exact instrumentation throughout. Whereas this one, even though I really like the lyrics, I went out because this album is a concept album, and I always have a soft spot for those. So even if I don't really love the music, I can usually latch onto the lyrics, and I do really like the lyrics on this one. I think he's a very good songwriter, a very good lyricist. He's good at kind of conveying whatever the theme is and doing it in a way that is a bit unexpected, but also feels very cathartic, I think. And I think throughout, kind of the way he uses metaphors on this album is pretty strong, and just kind of the way it's a little more abstract in writing. And even though it feels, even though they're not necessarily it's not really a new lyrical style for him, it kind of feels that way just because he's operating on a larger scale. So that's cool. I'm going to give this one 3 out of 5. It was, I maybe probably could listen to this again, and it would maybe I could maybe handle it. But it was, I part of it might be the concept bias. Maybe if it was a concept album, it'd probably be 2.5. But I respect when an album tries and executes kind of something that it tries to be a little bit bigger than just a release on the charts. I think that's cool. And even though I have respect for the band, but I don't really like them, I respect that they actually, good job, guys. Good, you passed with a C-, but good job.
I gotta ask, are these top 2 better or worse than the Television Reunion record?
Oh, same maybe.
Are they better than Marky Moon?
Not even close.
I do agree that it's not even close, but we're on different ends of the spectrum.
Well, I'm not even a Television fan. I'll just say that,
Yeah, I think you're absolutely insane. That's all I can say. Right? I'm completely dumbfounded that someone who clearly knows something about music, which you do, could put that album at number 1. But that's fine. We can move past it.
Furthermore, more than somebody that knows music, somebody that has gone on rants about how much they hate electronics in music.
Yeah.
I will explain.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you will. But also, another thing I will correct, that's not their only concept album. So that's all I'll say. But I have the same number 2.
It's more conceptual, is what I mean.
Okay,
It was the most that it was. I was sold on the concept the most on that one.
Yeah, I can see that. It's my number 2 as well. I have it on vinyl. Transatlantisism. Yeah, this album I have had an absolute roller coaster journey with, because you'll figure out by now, and anyone who has ever had an interaction with me about this band will know what my number one was. But you'll know that my number one is We Have the Facts When Voting Yes. And that was the first album of theirs I heard, drastically different in sound to Transatlantisism. And then I was like, oh, Transatlantisism is one of the other albums that they put in a high regard. I listened to it and I was like, I hate this. This is awful. Like, it's so clean and wimpy and just, ugh. And then I just went on with my day. And then a few years later, I was like, well, I should probably give it a second chance. And I really dived into the lyrics and I kind of accepted the album for what it was. It's not a lo-fi album. It's kind of still emo, but it doesn't really have the sort of the riffs that I was enjoying on We Have the Facts, which is one of my favorite things about the album is the guitar work. And it's not really present as much here. But as a pure like songwriting achievement, this is like up there all time for me. You were talking about the concept album nature of it. Yeah, I think it's especially true on tracks like Passenger Seat and the title track, obviously. This sort of idea of, you know, again, the transatlantic divide of a relationship, which is quite interesting. And that's why I love the title track so much, is because it feels like literally he is pulling the states over the transatlantic divide with music, and it's just like this most epic thing. I love it so much. But like, I don't know what I was thinking when I first listened to this album, because it's great, it's amazing. The New Year is a song I listen to every New Year because it's a mood, because it's very depressing, and it's like, yeah, this is the new year, but I don't feel any different. I'm like, yeah, I feel that. I feel like I relate to Ben Gibbard's songwriting a bit too much for my own benefit, but you know, anyway. Lightness is great. I didn't used to like it. I thought it was a bit of a weak track on the album, but I've come to really enjoy it. Title and Registration is one of my favorite on the whole album. I love that acoustic riff. It's really catchy. Expo 86 is really good, and I should probably listen to it more than I actually do. I would say this is their melodic peak for me. And like, a lot of these songs really get stuck in my head. The Sound of Settling, I absolutely adore. Again, it's like once per album, they're like, oh, let's just do a power pop song, why not? And I always love it. Like, Sound of Settling is one of the best as well. And I love the line, I'll sit and wonder of all the love that could have been if I'd thought of something charming to say, which is like is a very sort of blunt lyric. Tiny Vessels is great lyrics on that as well. Like I said, the title track is like an epic experience. Passenger Seat's awesome. Death of an Interior Decorator is probably the closest to the photo album on this album, I would say. And that's not a bad thing, it's great. We Look Like Giants is really like weirdly angry, and it comes at a really good point on the album where it feels like a release of tension. And I actually really like A Lack of Color as a closer. It's one of my favorites. I think it's a really nice sort of coda to the whole experience. I think, yeah, I like Ben singing a lot on this. It's produced really well. And I think as much as I prefer the sound of my number one, for this sound, it is as good as it could be. And it's amazing.
I feel like we're going to have I think we're going to have similar reviews, but we're going to have different records. At my number two and your number one. Because my number two is Songs About Airplanes, man. Yeah, Death Cab, this was a band of my choosing if it wasn't obvious enough. And I'm a massive fan of both late 90s and 2000s indie rock. And they seemed like a good band to really dip my toes into. And going into this, I was only familiar with Plans. And if you know what that album is like, it's a bit of culture shock going from this to Plans. But Gibbard's vocals are much lower in the mix, and they're going for a softer and at times noisier direction upon this record. And it's a very typical to other 90s indie rock, something like a Built to Spill. But Gibbard can make that style one of its own. And it starts out with an absolutely fantastic streak of President of What, To Sleep Spent, to Sleep Spent, my apologies. And all of those tracks are just absolutely fantastic, utilizing the style with some of Gibbard's signature vocal delivery and amazing lyrical content. I was expecting some type of dip within the track listing, but there just simply isn't one for me. Amputations and Fake Frowns are both outstanding. Then we get to the closing track, Line of Best Fit. I love the longing of this song with the slow build that it keeps going. This is basically everything that I want from a debut record. It shows a ton of promise for them in the future. And even if I do prefer sounds they would later go on to do, and even if this album is very derivative of other bands of the time, I simply cannot justify because how much I enjoy these songs, Gibbard as a lyricist and his vocals upon this, as well as just how amazing the band sounds. I can't justify putting this below 5 stars. I think that it's absolutely outstanding.
Okay. Now is the time where I justify putting Codes and Keys at number 1.
To justify.
Yeah, but what I don't know. I've given up on being, the voice of reason at this point. Whatever. It's I don't really like the style very much. I agree, like it's kind of weird and electronic-y at points. But the one thing I will say, lyrically, it's just mid. Like it's maybe even below par. But in terms of the music, this is probably the only Death Cab album where I could tell you where one song ends and another song starts. This is the only one where I actually could tell that songs, like different arrangements, they sounded different. It wasn't just a 45-minute long mulch of emo whining and like weird guitar. Like I'll get like some examples are on gotta look at the tracks. On the title track, they have like tack piano, and that's I always like that instrument. I think it adds a cool timbre to any song that has it. Another good example would be Doors Unlocked and Opened, which they add like an electro theremin, which I also like. It kind of mixes it up. But it's just stuff like that around the album. Like it feels like every song, and some of them have kind of like voice effects on it, and they just sound different song to song. And even the like weird electronic-y elements, it at least gives me something to kind of chew on, I think. Even if I'm not gonna like put this up to listen a ton, but I think sometimes I'm gonna get a pretty unique experience for this discography that I don't think you could get somewhere else. For that, it's hovering between 3 and 3.5. I will give it, this is hard. I'm gonna give it like a very, very low 3.5. It is like an inch above the line, but it's above it. So
can I just say you like that album more than both of us do? We both gave it 3 stars.
Interesting. How was a twist?
That's the single most surprising thing that happened in this entire video. You liking that record of every Death Cab album just blows me away. I had that in my mind pegged down. That's either your dead last or 8th place. There's no chance that was near the top.
I was cut off very abruptly in my last segment, and I apologize. The annoyances of recording very late and accidentally waking up people.
Oh, that's cool, man. Don't worry.
Hopefully, your editor is a wizard.
It's not exactly like a super professional operation. I don't think. I think we're okay.
He's something, all right.
People aren't going to watch this long. Like, come on. They'll have heard Aiden and been like, well, I'm out.
Well, I think that they'll be okay with him until number 7.
True, yeah. So, my number 1, predictable, is another album I own on vinyl. We have The Facts, and we're voting yes. I can see why Aiden doesn't like it, because it is quite similar sonically to the debut in a lot of ways. And if you weren't super keen on the debut and then you get to the second album and it's more of the same, I can understand why you would be like, yeah, this isn't very good. But for me, this was a really important album. Well, still is a really important album in my life. It came to me, well, I came to it at a point where I was ready to relate to a lot of the lyrics on here. like I said, it is kind of a concept album in a lot of ways. It's sort of about growing up and dealing with a lot of different kind of stuff, different kind of feelings, and there's sort of the feeling of like the person that you love is growing up a lot faster than you are. That's kind of the vibe I get from this album, which is an interesting concept. There's like the I can't remember which song it is. I've gone blank. Where he crashes the wedding, and oh god, I can't believe I've forgotten what song that is. But anyway, there's just, I think this might be my favorite album ever in terms of lyrics. I absolutely love every line of every song. I think Aiden put it well. It's like this could very easily be pretentious, but it comes off quite sincere to me, because he's sort of, his wording is quite, it's got a lot of flair to it, but he's saying a lot of quite blunt things at the same time. The opener title track is my favorite Cab For Cutie song. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. I love the switch up halfway through where you get a bit more of the clean production, which is really nice because it sort of sets you up of like, oh, this is going to be exactly the same as something about airplanes. And then you get the switch halfway through. It's like, oh, this is cool, like a cool little switch up. I love the lyrics on that as well. The employment pages has some really great low-key drum work, which I like. It's very subtle, but it sort of really complements the song well. For a reason, it's kind of the jolt of energy that you need on the album, and that Lol MA are very sort of upbeat songs in a very downbeat album. Lol MA might be their catchiest song. That song gets lodged in my head all the time. Yeah, it's all about the deterioration of a relationship, and again, it's like about growing up too fast before you know how to live, which is a really interesting thing. It's like that doesn't get talked about much, where you're sort of at the point where there's so many responsibilities, but you don't really know what you're doing. And I mean, that's me to a T, to be honest. But 405 is one of my all-time favorite songs as well. Amazing lyrics, again, really catchy. One of the first songs I learned on the guitar actually was 405. Little Fury Bugs has always been my least favorite on the album, but it fits the concept and it is a good song. It's just not one that I like returning too much. And then, yeah, good call on Company Calls. The sort of jolt of energy of Company Calls is amazing. Like the way the synapse to synapse line comes up in that song, and then that's the line that starts the epilogue of Company Calls to sort of tie them together lyrically, is really good. I think Ben actually said he did an interview where he talked about Death Cab and how he thought the best album they'd ever done was Transatlantisism, but he thought the best song they'd ever done was Company Calls Epilogue, because he thought the guitar work on that was the best stuff he had ever been a part of, which I thought was quite interesting. I don't think he's right, but I mean, I respect it. Yeah, it's like sort of a come down as well, and then you get the longer songs at the end, which I can see, you know, sort of pacing wise of the album, how that could sort of kill it for you. But I kind of like how the first half of the album is sort of like setting the scene, and then the second half of the album is kind of just dealing with all this emotion, and sort of, yeah, I kind of like that about it. No Joy in Mudville is really, really, really sad. I think that's the one about the wedding cake. There's like the wedding figurines on the wedding cake, and he's like talking about that and stuff, which is quite interesting. There's like a nocturnal vibe to the whole album. It's quite deep in self-reflection. I actually really love Scientist Studies. I think it's a really good way to close the album. I love how it gets really intense towards the end, quite loud, it just feels like a last burst of anger at the end of the album. And the line, I may have got an invitation, but I wasn't invited, kind of sums up the whole album to me. It's like feeling like you don't belong somewhere, and that you know, it's like you're going to someone's wedding and they're like way further along in life than you are. So, I mean, I adore this album. I love every second of it. But it's not like, I can see why you wouldn't love it as much as I do. I feel like it's a very personal thing because of the time in my life I discovered it, and my connection to Gibbard's songwriting. But I think it's way better than the debut. It's so much better in every way. Like, it's so much more unique. It feels like, you know, the debut, you're right about the influences from Built to Spill, and they were really leaning on that in the debut. and it's good, but like this, you know, the added sort of slight electronic elements, and I just think, yeah, it's probably my favorite album ever in terms of songwriting. It's a top 10 album of all time for me. I'm gonna take this album with me for the rest of my life, and I love it. So yeah, so that's my 5 stars. If you didn't guess.
Oh man, I thought that you said that was 4 out of 5 midway through the review. Okay, but yeah, you're telling me that record doesn't still sound so much like Perfect From Now On and Keep It Like a Secret? I think the influence is there, really, until.
The influence is there, but I don't think it's as blatant as the debut for me.
I mean, fair enough. Both of those late 90s Built to Spill records, it's 4.5 and 5. I think Keep It Like a Secret's top 20 all time for me, which I can't even say about my number one, which might be surprising to you. My number one is going to be Plans, and simply put, this alongside Funeral by Arcade Fire and Yankee Hotel Foxtrot might be some of the most influential records in the entirety of my listening. These are what formed me into the listener that I am, with how much my love of indie rock is and just how much that style of music means to me. I'm not even quite sure how I'm supposed to write a review for this record. Marching Band of Manhattan clearly showcases a shift in the band. They've dropped most of their influences from Built to Spill, and it's far more directly focused on Gibbert's songwriting, and it's just absolutely wonderful. Soul Meets Body is, in my personal opinion, a perfect song. I think that the electronica that they add on this record, which it's on previous records, but I think that this is where they fully incorporate it into the best way. It's just absolutely fantastic. It has one of the best earworms ever, probably their best hook, if you really had to put a gun to my head and tell me to pick one. Summer Skin is also an amazing come down after that song, and I adore the marching line drum patterns that are filled within that song. Adds a really interesting style to it. Different names for the same thing. Once again, it's just amazing. It's slightly haunting within its longer runtime and allows you to break into the next segment of the record. I Will Follow You Into the Dark is beautiful, an amazing sort of ballad-esque track in which Gibbard is just beautifully depicting his affection. Just tremendous. Your Heart in an Empty Room and Someday You Will Be Loved are just fantastic once more, with the latter cut especially adding a great backbone to the more stripped back song, which helps elevate it beyond belief. Crooked Teeth is one of the more fun songs on the record and even has this wonderful melancholy from the playing, in my opinion. What Sarah Said is my favorite song. I just think that the song is absolutely incredible on every level. Gibbard describes the pain and heartbreak he has whenever he has to sit next to this woman that he loves slowly perish. It just breaks me. It's one of the few songs that can really just hit me directly into an emotional aspect, and I just think that it's absolutely stunning. I think it's over 6 minutes, but every single bit of that runtime just builds into one of the most beautiful tracks that I ever heard, and just really my favorite song, if I had to pick one. Moving from there, I gotta point out one more thing about that. The climax of him not really yelling, but for Death Cab yelling out, "So who's gonna watch you die?" That can just bring somebody to tears with just how passionate and one of the weird circumstances in which how emo and how just sort of edgy he sounds blends into the emotion in such a captivating way for me. Admittedly, I do think that Brothers on a Hotel Bed and Stable Song are weaker than the other songs. And my biggest issue with this album is the production. I do think that this record sounds a little flat, maybe a little thin at points, but I just adore the songwriting. I think that the playing is utterly tremendous, and I just can't get enough of this project despite my small gripes with the sound of it. If it wasn't clear enough, this is a 5-star record, and it's easily somewhere within my top 30 albums of all time. Just absolutely tremendous.
Sweet. I mean, that wasn't too painful.
What Sarah said brought the pain in me, so I'm good with that. All right, so I meant to ask this at the beginning, but I gotta lay it out there. Tom, do you put ketchup on your hot dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah, good man.
No.
I mean,
This is
I don't
unacceptable.
eat hot
Okay.
dogs. Hot dogs suck. I don't eat hot dogs.
What?
Oh,
No. Okay.
You gotta have the
This is-
ketchup on there, though.
This is way more crazy opinions than any of the Death Cab stuff. Number one, putting ketchup on hot dogs. Number two, not liking hot dogs. Like both of those things are.
Hot dogs are
Mm,
gross.
I don't know if I could.
It's like waste meat put into a sausage. It's awful. It's like sausages, but way worse.
No,
If that's
I'm
how
sorry.
you feel. Well, I wanted to ask that just
I
because.
feel bad about this episode. You know, I feel
No,
like
it was
Don't.
fun. I think you brought a lot of anger and you balanced out the fanboy and girling. So
yeah.
You eloquently put your opinion on this band, even if it was wrong on every level.
Thank
I'll tell you this: if I was doing an episode on like U2 or something, I would have been a lot more harsh than you were. So
I don't like you two at all. So I think we'd be an alliance there.
You two are a top 40 band for me. Love them. Octane Baby is top 5 of the 90s by far.
I've not heard it. I can't comment. So
I think that if you're gonna like a U2 record, Octane Baby will be the one. So back to Death Cab. Yeah, I'm not sure how Aiden's list ended up like this. It goes against everything that I know about him, and yeah, I loved every second of it.
Thank
Me?
you. I'm glad I could be of service in that regard.
No problem. As you can tell, Tom and I are slightly higher on this band. Like him a little bit. Aiden, not quite as much, I would say. But
it was interesting to see the different takes for sure.
For sure. You're crazy about narrow stairs, though.
Well, you're crazy about we have the facts at full.
I'm crazier about Transatlantisism.
You guys can both be crazy. There's no need to fight, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, codes and keys, or as I like to call it, bleeps and bloops.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
I'll
that
take it.
being said, we're getting rid of Tom next week. We don't need any more of these Brits on our channel. We're getting back Steph. We're finally making it to where I don't feel outnumbered being a woman. We're going to be doing the wonderful discography of the band. Per the usual, we aren't including cover records because who cares? And all that being said, I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoy Steph being back. Hope you enjoy either hating Death Cab with Aiden or loving Death Cab with myself and Tom. With all that being said, I hope you have a really great night and enjoyed the episode. See ya.